Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat, I'm your host. For today's episode, we're going to talk about how it's supposed to be boring. That thing you're trying to achieve, that person you're trying to be with, whatever that is, whatever you're striving towards, it's supposed to be boring. And I say this specifically for those of us, because I am included in this at times, who once they get something that they've been working towards and it ends up being actually very boring, quote unquote. And what I mean by boring typically is we confuse secure, stable, certain with boring, right? Because it doesn't have that heightened feeling of excitement or anxiety tied to it. So when you get that thing that you've been striving toward, working toward, and it feels boring, you then might think, oh, this isn't what I'm supposed to have, or it's not right for me because it's not giving me that excitement, that spark. And so you might self-sabotage. You might say, you know what, this actually isn't right for me. So I'm going to go find the thing that actually gives me that feeling of excitement. And this is kind of a mental trick that you play on yourself. Because if you are attached to things that are exciting and you're always seeking excitement, basically what you're telling yourself by doing that, what the inner or maybe subconscious narrative is there. And of course, this is just my own experience. I'm not a therapist. This is what I've had to really, really work through. The narrative that's tied in there is, I want things that are elusive, things that I cannot get, because this feeling of anxiety or excitement, you get that when you're chasing something, right? You get that when you're trying to get it, you're on the hunt for it, when it's eluding you, when you don't know for sure if that person wants you or doesn't want you, or if it's going to work out, or, like, oh, do they like me? That text message you get from them, or that thing that you're trying to achieve, whatever endeavor you're after, the excitement of being on the hunt towards it, right? Getting it, but being in the process of it, right? Because ultimately, when you get that thing, if it is aligned for you, right? And this is going to tie into this a little bit later, but if it is aligned for you, when you get it, it's not going to be exciting. It's going to be boring, quote unquote, because again, it's not actually boring, but it's what we perceive as boring if you're always seeking excitement. It's going to be boring because it's going to be part of your normal life. It's going to be part of your normal existence. And normal life is boring, quote unquote. It's not this heightened excitement all the time. And you're not always in this state of ecstasy. So the things that you have in your everyday life are not going to be like that because that's not how life is, And that isn't to say that you can't enjoy the thing you get, that person you date, whatever. It's not to say that it's not going to be fun and you're not enjoyable and you're not going to find contentment in it. Of course you are. I'm talking about that feeling of excitement, that heightened state, because it's not sustainable long term. You cannot sustain that feeling because it is not rooted in alignment and it's not rooted in something that is true for you. Because again, if you get that thing and now it's part of your life, your daily experience, which is what you want. So let's say as an example, you want to be a full-time artist, right? When you become a full-time artist, your life is going to be you doing your art. So it's not going to be this envisioned, idealized image of what it means now to be an artist, and every day I'm going to be making art. And yeah, the fantasy might be really fun. It might be really exciting to think about that. But the reality of it is real life. And real life requires mundanity, work, monotony. Like there's so many things that are part of real life that are not part of fantasy. And so if you're tied to that fantasy, which inspires that excitement in you, you're not going to think that the thing that you actually get that fits into your normal life is what you're seeking, because you're like, well, it's not exciting anymore. So it's not exciting. So it must not be right for me. The same applies to relationships. And I think many of us have experienced this. I talk to a lot of people in my one-to-one calls that talk about this. And I see it in a lot of TikTok videos and just content online, that when you date somebody who does not inspire that feeling of excitement, the spark, you start thinking that, oh, maybe they're not right for me. Like I'm not feeling that feeling of being on my toes. I hear that a lot too. I don't feel like I'm on my toes, but with this person, I'm on my toes with them. Typically, not always. Obviously, there's nuance to all of these topics that I talk about, but typically what that means is that person is elusive. They're keeping you on your toes because you are on the hunt all the time and you're not sure if you're going to have them in your life. They might text you one day and not text you the other day. They might show up but then disappear or whatever. That's why you feel like you're always on your toes. Not because this person is just exciting. Not that they are the manic pixie dream girl or dream boy. I don't know if there's like a term for the male version of that. It's because there's a lack of security there. And if you were to be in a proper relationship with somebody, which I'm sure many of us want, right? And there's nothing wrong with wanting that, of course. But I think if you're wanting that, but you're seeking out excitement all the time as well, those two cannot coexist. You cannot be in a stable, secure, trusting relationship, a certain relationship, and still maintain that level, that heightened level of anxiety and excitement all the time. Again, it does not mean that you're not going to be excited with this person. Of course, you're going to do fun things with them that are going to inspire excitement, of course, right? But you're not going to be at that heightened state in the way that you would be with a partner or someone that you're dating who is uncertain and is not very secure and is triggering your insecurity or your insecure attachment style, right? So we really have to switch that mindset with anything. And it doesn't even apply to relationships only. It's anything. If you're seeking for it to be exciting, then you're not going to actually want to sustain it when you get it, because it's going to be boring, because it's supposed to be boring. And when I say boring, again, I don't mean like literally there's no fun in it, or it's just something that makes you feel lackluster and it's just not, no, I'm talking about the sense of boring, the quote unquote boring that we ascribe to things that are not triggering that heightened excitement, that heightened anxiety all the time. And I'll say this from my own experience as somebody who has started and tried to maintain a creative career, right? When I first began this journey, or years ago when I was trying to become a writer or a creative person online who has an audience and makes money doing it, back then when I was fantasizing about it, it felt very exciting. The idea of being like this artist that gets to just write and create all day and be in her thoughts, and very exciting, very romanticized, right? And now that I'm in it, now that I'm truly in it right now, and I'm in the experience of it and I'm doing it every day, it's literally the same as it would have been if I was in another kind of job. The same job that I was trying to escape with the fantasy back in the day. That's what it's like right now. Now, obviously, I am more aligned with this work. I enjoy this work more. It is more attuned to my skills and my interests. So that is more where my contentment lies, right? But it's not that heightened fantasy anymore, because it's real life now. And real life requires work and effort. And there are failures, and you feel insecure regardless, because, that's just how life is sometimes. It's not going to have that excitement and that fun and that the spark all the time. I'm not constantly in the state of being this, romanticized artist who gets to do this stuff. I'm not living that way, because that's not what normal life is. That's not how life actually is. Life is boring for the most part. Of course, there are pockets of time where it is fun, it's exciting, it's invigorating, obviously, and it's boring. But boring is not bad. Boring is actually really good. You want to be in those times of boredom. That is where the security, the stability, the normalcy is. And that's okay. But I think we kind of villainize the concept of boring, because it's like, no, you should always be seeking things that give you that excitement, that trigger you, that provide the spark all the time. But that's not realistic, and that's not how life actually is all the time. And so if you're chasing that, you're telling yourself that I do not deserve, or I'm not worthy, rather, of the things that I actually want, because I only want the things that don't want me, the things that are elusive to me. That's what I'm chasing all the time, no matter what. The things that are not rooted in reality. That's what you're telling yourself that you want. Things that are not real, because a heightened state or heightened sense of excitement all the time is not real. It's not rooted in reality. It is part of the fantasy of getting this dreamlike state, this dreamlike person, this dreamlike job, whatever it might be for you. And it's like, that's not how you want to live life. That means you're never going to get the things that are actually aligned for you, because the things that are aligned for you, while they feel good, they are, aligned with your skills, your interests, whatever, they're not exciting. They're not going to feel like a fantasy all the time, because that's not how life actually functions. Life is normal, life is mundane, life is monotonous at times, and that's just what it is. So it's okay. It's okay that things are boring. They're supposed to be boring. So if you find a person that you are with every day and there isn't that spark and that heightened excitement, and you're not always on your toes, it's just very, steady. That's good. That's a good sign. And try not to convince yourself that it's a bad sign. And obviously be mindful as well, and make sure you have the same values, the same morals, that you do align. I'm not saying that you should only seek out people that are boring, but, ignore all the other things that are not right about them. Same thing with your work, same thing with anything, right? Don't convince yourself that because it's boring, quote unquote, it's stable, secure, not exciting all the time, not having that spark all the time, that it's wrong for you. Don't let yourself convince yourself of that, because you are worthy of having the things that you want in life, and not sabotaging your efforts because they don't look like this fantasy that either you have created for yourself or others have imposed onto you. And what a disservice to yourself to not let yourself get the things you actually want just because they don't look like what you initially thought. Because a lot of the time, the things that we are actually aligned with, the things that are right for us, don't look like what we expected, because when we attach expectation, it's rooted in something else. It's rooted in a belief that might not be ours, or in this idea of what it's going to look like without all the information, because we need time to gather that information. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you a different perspective on boredom, or when things feel boring. And if you're struggling with it, if you're experiencing this right now, I hope this helped with that. If you want to work with me one-to-one about topics like this and talk about them, feel free to book a call with me. I also have a Substack where I talk about these topics, and you can follow my social media accounts for all my other content. But other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.